Hey guys, we're starting a new unit with square roots and simplifying anything that has to do with square roots. Give yourself a little grace here. It's going to be a little challenging at first, but once you get the hang of it, I think you'll be able to roll with it. What I've done with the skill checks is that I've allowed you to go in and see what you've missed. Now, it does not give you the correct answer, but you can at least see the ones that you're missing and the ones that you're getting correct. If you will, if you still have some questions, please feel free to ask me, send me a message. I also will hold a conference every day of the week except for Friday this week. And also on Wednesday, we'll have a Google Meet like we did last week that will cover both lessons from this week. So that's what we have going on this week. I hope that I get to see you guys here pretty soon, if not on the Google Meet, but hopefully soon at school. So we're going to get into this. And again, feel free to message me or anything like that if you have any questions. So just a couple of things on kind of some good vocabulary that we have going on here. So just to get this all kind of understood is that we have the nth root of a number a can be written as a radical expression, which is what has almost looks like a little exponent in the square root of a. So the n is considered to be the index. And then underneath the a, which is underneath the square root, is called the radicand. I think it has a radicand at the end. And then the actual square root symbol is called the radical. So that's what we're talking about when I say radicals. So if I say underneath the radical sign, that kind of thing, that's what we're talking about. If there is no index, so if there's no number that's little bitty, not the big number that's going to be out front, but almost looks like an exponent, if there's no index out there, then you assume that n is equal to 2. So you're going to go ahead and assume that it's the square root. Okay, go ahead and assume that it's the square root. And that's all we're going to probably be working with. We're not going to look at cube roots or to the 4th root or nth root or 5th root or anything like that. We're just looking at the square root here. So we're going to list the first 12 perfect squares. This would be really good for you to kind of keep on a little Post-it card right next to your computer while you're working on these. Write it down on a piece of paper and just keep these with you because you're going to need them and you're going to need to memorize them. So I'm just going to write it almost as a table here. So that way you can see basically what the square root is. So if I have 1 squared, that's 1. So the perfect squares are going to be on the bottom. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. 10 squared is 100. 11 squared is 121. And 12 squared is 144. So if you're going to keep this kind of table next to you, as you can see. So when I square something, so like 2 squared is 4. So the square root of 4 is 2. Now, that's the only time that you can divide the square root by 2 and get the answer, okay? So it's not a dividing by 2 situation here. Remember, squared means I'm multiplying it by itself, okay? So you get sometimes you want to go ahead and just divide by 2 and move on with it, but it's not dividing by 2. You're looking at you're looking at perfect squares, so it has to be times itself. So the square root of 16 is 4. So what times itself gives me 16 is going to be 4. Again, you can simplify that using your calculator, so square root, and move on from there. So if you'll see, this time I have a 2 out front. So that's not the index. The index would be like right there. So this is not the index. This is going to be 2 times. So it's a multiplying by 2. Well, that's the square root of 121 is out here, which is 11, okay? And then I have 2 times 11, which makes 22, okay? And then I'm going to have 4 times the square root of 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So 4 times 10. So the square root of 100 is 10, and I get 40. here. Answers here. Let me make sure we get all the answers. And then 3 times the square root of 400. So I don't have 400 out there, but I know that 4 is a perfect square if that's 2, and then 100 is 10. So that's going to end up being 20. Again, you could simplify that using your calculator, even the calculator on your phone. But definitely use the square root symbol on that Desmos.com/scientific. So that will help as well too. So I have 3 times 20. So the square root of 400 is 20. And so again, not 200, not dividing by 2. And then so I have 3 times 20, which is going to give me 60 here. Okay, not too bad. But now we're going to get a little bit more challenging. So what happens? So if you look at all those numbers, think about all the numbers that are between 1 and 100, okay, there's only 10 perfect squares. All right. So what about all those numbers that are in between? Well, we're going to look and see how you can simplify those numbers that are in between. So what you want to do is you want to find the largest perfect square that the radicand is divisible by. So something that you can divide into it. So basically we're going to split it up into 2 factors. And then you're going to break that down using that perfect square. Now, if you don't use the largest one, that's okay because you still could split it off again. Okay. And then you're going to take the square root of those perfect squares. So go ahead and find those. And then basically the leftover number stays underneath the radical sign. All right. So we have the square root of 32. So what perfect square can go into 32? Because 32 is not a perfect square. Okay. I'm going to list those over here real quick. So I'm going to look and see what number can go into 32. 4 can, but there's also a number that's bigger than 4, which is going to be 16. So 16 can go into 16 times 2 gives you 32. So this would be something you can kind of guess and check. And the really good thing about this is that you don't have to guess and check a lot of numbers because there's not very many numbers. So we have 32 can be written as the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. So I split it up like that because you can do that. Okay. Then I'm going to take the square root of 16, which is 4, times the square root of 2. And that is as simplified as it can get. Okay. So on these, if it's not a perfect square, you're going to have something left underneath the radical sign. Okay. You're going to have a radicand. So let's look at example 6. So you can see 75 is not a perfect square. So I need to look at my perfect squares over here on the side and see which one of those is going to be able to go into or be divisible by 75. So that's going to be 25. So this can be written as a square root of 25 times the square root of 3. So the square root of 25 is 5, and then the square root of 3 stays square root of 3. So this is simplified. Okay, and I'll show you what I want on your skill check here in just a second. All right, so we have 180. So let's take a look over here. And I kind of want to look and see if I can think of a perfect square that can go into 180. And it looks like 36. So this is the square root of 36 times the square root of 5. So 36 times 5 gives you 180. If you're not sure, just start dividing it out. It'll be fine. And then so the square root of 36 is 6 times the square root of 5. Moving on from there. All right, so now we have a number that's out in front, so I'll have to multiply that. Then I have to simplify what's inside of the radical sign there. So I have 54. So the largest number that can go into 54, that's a perfect square. So it's not just a number. It has to be a perfect square from those numbers on the side. So I'm going to have 2 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 6 because 9 is a perfect square. So I have 2 times the square root of 9, which is 3, times the square root of 6. So then I would multiply these two numbers together, and so that would give me 6 square root of 6. And that's how we would simplify that. And then we have 100. Now we have 150. So 150 is going to be the square root that, or the perfect square that can go into that is 25. So I have -5 times the square root of 25 times the square root of 6, because 25 times 6 gives me 150. Then I'm going to go ahead and find this perfect square. So it's going to be -5 times 5, because that's what the square root of 25 is. That's why I did that. Times the square root of 6. That leaves there. Then I'm going to multiply these two together. That gives me -25 times the square root of 6. And that would be your simplified form. Okay. And then we have -3 times the square root of 28. So the perfect square that can go into 28 is going to be 4. So I have -3 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 7, because 4 times 7 gives me 28. That's where I got that 7 from. So then I have -3 times 2 times the square root of 7. These two multiplied together give you -6 times the square root of 7. So I don't need that times square root of 7. And that's our simplified form. So 6 square root of 7. Okay. So now on your skill check, all right, so pay close attention. On your skill check, it says blank, and then it has it looks like a little check mark, and then it has another blank. Okay. So you're going to put, if there's a number out front, so if I were to write the example from number 10, if I were to write that answer in here, my first blank when I'm going to fill this in would be -6, and then the second blank is going to be 7. Okay, so you want to pay close attention to that, and make sure you have that. On the ones that do not have, like on the first example, so you'll have some of those that make a perfect square, it will not ask you for 2 blanks. So you don't have to worry about, well, like, what if there isn't one? Okay, so you just want to make sure you're kind of taking care of that. All right, so that's how you want to write out in those fill in the blanks, and that's all that these are. So remember, I've allowed you to see what you've missed, okay? And I'll go back and fix all the previous skill checks so that you can see what you missed, and you can go in and fix those ones that you're missing there. And so you can go in and fix those. So I think that's it, guys. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Hop on to Schoology Conference or Google Meet this week, and we'll kind of go over some more examples of these so that you guys can ask questions. And I think that's it. You guys have a great day.